Hello and welcome to ChinnyVision. Time to strap on your jetpack and go for some arcade action. I have kind of covered this game before in one of the BBC Micro videos, but today we're looking at Jetpac and we're starting off on the Sinclair Spectrum. This game runs on a 16K Spectrum, so it's the base model. Quite rare for a big game to be able to run on just a 16K model. And of course the game is by Ultimate. The Stamper Brothers sold 300,000 copies and apparently raised £1 million in revenue for Ultimate. So what you do is you first of all assemble the rocket, and then on this first level you drop fuel onto the rocket whilst avoiding the baddies. Then when the rocket is fueled, you escape the level. It's that simple really. Well, I say it's that simple, but you do have to avoid the baddies. Each level has a different set of baddies, all of them with different movement styles. These baddies on this level only go from side to side, so it's pretty easy to predict where they're going. In fact, the majority are going right to left. Occasionally things drop from the sky, which you can collect for bonus points. And then when the rocket's flashing, you just simply touch it down there and the rocket takes off. Every 4 levels you get a new rocket and have to reassemble the rocket. On the other levels between that, the rocket simply lands and all you have to do is refuel it. And as you'll see, these furry monsters bounce around. So again, different enemy movement. Move the game on to a later level. I think we're at level 6 or 7 now. Different spaceship, and each level is ostensibly the same style. The difficulty does ramp up, but not hugely, because what happens is once you've got past level 8, the baddies loop back to the simplest type of baddie again. So game basically goes on and on and on. But each time you complete 4 levels, you do get a new spaceship. And by the way, I need to thank Mensky for giving me a snapshot this far into the game, because I couldn't get beyond about levels 5 or 6 myself without dying, because Jetpac is a hard game. So I put a plea out on Twitter and Mensky answered the call, and this is why I'm able to load a snapshot into my Spectrum and play these later levels. As you'd expect for an Ultimate game, the graphics are beautifully drawn. There is a little bit of slowdown, and there is colour clash going on, but this is a really early game. As you can see there, when the enemies pass over the spaceship, you do get the colour clash. And all this, as I say, runs in 16K. So going on to really flash spaceship here, and I'm not sure how much further I'll be able to play this. Certainly Mensky told me that he had trouble getting much further than this. He gave me a selection of snapshots of the game. Play the game on Kempston joystick or keyboard. The keyboard controls are a little bit fiddly. I've noticed this because I was playing the game on the Spectrum myself, and when I'm using Mensky's snapshots, I'm having to play on keyboard because he was playing on keyboard. And I'm just finding the layout just a little bit fiddly. You've got your thrust key and your fire key above each other, and you sometimes trying to work out which you're supposed to be pressing. Not many lives left now, but still struggling on. Game's so colourful. It's really nice to see an early Spectrum game with so much colour. And of course, this game is the first game of the Jetman trilogy. You have Lunar Jetman, and then you have Solar Jetman, which only came out on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Commodore 64 version, partially developed, and the Spectrum version not developed at all due to poor sales of the NES version. Coded by the Pigford brothers, who did quite a good job on the NES. Over to BBC Micro. And a typical BBC style loading screen here. and very, very colourful. Not as good animation here on the BBC as it was on the Spectrum, and a much more cramped display, which makes this game rock hard. You've got far less time to predict what's coming towards you and avoid it, but it is beautifully colourful. I love all the colour on the laser as you move around. The colours constantly change. Nice arcade style touch from Ultimate, and nice to see on the BBC Micro, which doesn't always get the best conversions. Yes, this version is a little bit flawed due to the lower resolution and the more confined game area, but that does make it rock hard, but it's still quite good fun. And there's a very nice blasting effect on your jetpack when you do have the thrust on. Just nice little touches just like that make the game look really polished. Right, one more piece of fuel to drop down. There we go. And one thing I should say is the screens do wrap around, so you can go off the left-hand side and re-emerge on the right, and vice versa. And you do need to use that as a tactic. The enemies also wrap around as well, so you do need to keep an eye on that. Tactic-wise, it's difficult because some levels it's beneficial to patrol perhaps the top of the screen and intercept those fuel packs as they come down. Other times you can't do that and you have to spend your time down the bottom of the screen. The greatest risk of dying is when you're dropping down into another section of the screen, because you can only shoot left and right. Nice Ultimate logo on the spaceship there as well. Don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to survive here on the BBC Micro. These are the fuzzy things here on level 2. Fuzzy enemies. And again, when enemies have got this more random movement on the BBC Micro with the more confined screen area, it does make it quite difficult. Game does have joystick support, although of course you've probably got an analog joystick on your BBC Micro, which isn't going to be terribly good for this kind of game. If you've got a digital joystick plugged into an analog adapter, that'll probably work quite well. One thing to note is I have this on a Ricochet slash Mastertronic re-release, and it says it works on the Electron. It does not. Mastertronic managed to put out a load of Ultimate games on re-release saying they worked on the Elk, and they simply do not. Basically, you have to have a BBC Micro to play, I think, any of the Ultimate games that are available on the Acorn systems. Got one more fuel pack to drop on the spaceship. Don't think I've got any lives left. Drop down. Can I get... Ooh. No, I'm dead. And the keyboard layout on this version is even worse than the Spectrum version. Oh no, I've got one life left. Hooray. Keyboard layout on the BBC Micro version. You can't redefine it. It's even more awkward than the Spectrum version. Again, you're using thrust and fire on the same hand with keys next to each other. Not good. I mean, ideally you'd like your fire key perhaps on your thumb on the spacebar or something, so you can go thrust with one of your fingers and then fire with your thumb. And I've died again. Balloons like Pang. Type in your name, player 1. And this game was released on the VIC-20, so here we are on the ChinnyVision VIC-20, first outing for quite a while. And the screen resolution is very similar to the BBC Micro version, which give you the same problems. I've asked a few VIC-20 fans about this, and they say yes, Jetpac on the VIC-20 is indeed rock hard. So unlike the Spectrum, which runs this game on the base system, a 16K system, on the VIC you do need a 16K RAM expansion to play Jetpac. Unsurprising, really, this was never going to run in 3.5K, and a game this polished in 16K is still a minor miracle. Drop the fuel down. Probably going to need one more. Flickering when the sprites cross over each other, but again, probably to be expected on the VIC-20. Didn't need to do anything there. And off we go. And the rocket should tell you, says Ultimate 1, which cycle of 4 levels you're on. So you'll get Ultimate 2 when you get to level 5, and I'm dead there. And you do get a multicolour laser effect on the VIC-20, although it's not as prominent as on the BBC Micro. And it's very difficult, it's very hard, it's very fast, and you've got the game's gravity and you're just trying to respond with a slightly reduced frame rate over the Spectrum version as well. Oh dear, it's very easy to get crowded out as well in a restricted area like the top platforms there on this more confined screen. And that's one tactic to go, just keep on cycling round, although you'll get caught out eventually. Oh, no, game over. Jetpac is a really early example of home computers trying to ape arcade games without copying arcade games. It's its own concept, it's its own game, but it seeks to be arcade quality or as close as you can in your home. The Spectrum version is the first version, it's the best version, it's got everything nailed on. Brilliant animation, good gameplay, the right screen dimensions for the game. The stampers really knew how to make the 16K Spectrum sing. That's not to take away from the BBC Micro version and the VIC-20 versions, but they do both suffer from a slightly confined play area, which makes the game that much harder. That said, if you've got those systems, this game is still a must-own. For the Spectrum, it's an all-time classic, and for the VIC-20 in BBC Micro, it's an example of a really good arcade game or an arcade-style game on those systems. Regardless, Jetpac is an all-time classic.